All right, well, good afternoon. We're going to get all the candidates on the call here and get started in just a minute. All right, well, good afternoon and thank you for joining the Chamber's District 46 Candidate Forum. I'm Katie Mastel, Government Affairs and Advocacy Manager at the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of our Chamber, welcome to today's Candidate Forum. I want to thank our public policy sponsors for making resources and events like today's event possible. So thank you to Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Dakota, Bremer Bank, First International Bank and Trust, Moore Engineering, and Sanford Health. We appreciate your support. Thank you also to the candidates who have agreed to participate today. While the Chamber doesn't endorse candidates, we're always proud to host events like this with the intent to educate our community on candidates before they head to the polls. If you're looking for more information about the candidates, measures, or voting information overall, you can visit our website at fmwfchamber.com and visit the 2020 election tab on the top right. A recording of today's candidate forum will be uploaded to that webpage as well. But we only have an hour with our candidates, so I want to get started right away to make the most of the time that we have with them. I'll first invite each candidate to provide up to 2 minutes of opening remarks. We will then move to Q&A, where candidates will have 1 minute to answer each the same question. And we will again close with 2-minute remarks from each candidate. So while they kick off their opening remarks, I'm going to put up on the screen a poll, and I'd like you to vote on the top 3 of what you'd like to hear from the candidates regarding for topics today. So please participate in that poll as I put it up on your screen to let us know what you want to hear about. In addition, you can send questions in through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. I'd just like to note all candidates were invited to participate from District 44 or 46, excuse me. And one of the candidates had something come up last minute, and the other candidate was unable to make this time work. But for Miss Terry Hedman, we were able to do some recordings ahead of time as she knew of her conflict before. So I will be sharing my screen to show those videos as we go through the questions. All right, so we will get started with opening remarks for 2 minutes. Candidates, you'll see the countdown clock on the screen as we talked about, and we will start right away with Senator Jim Rowers. Your 2 minutes.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the Chamber for hosting this event. And, I've been in District 7 or 46 now for going on my second term. I'm running for re-election so that I can guide and balance the budget through these difficult times that we're facing today. As a little bit of background about myself, I've been in the Fargo-Moorhead area running businesses for over 45 years now, and doing construction, property management, real estate development, and real estate sales. My wife and I also are very active in the community and the nonprofit world, working with North Dakota State University Foundation, as well as Churches United, Jeremiah, United Way, and many other things. In addition to that, we have 5 children, so consequently we end up being blessed with 17 grandchildren. So during my last 4 years in office, I've been working behind the scenes on a number of things. And I spent a lot of time working on higher education issues, trying to make sure that NDSU gets its fair share of funding when needed. In addition to that, I worked on the Water Topics Committee to make sure that the Red River Valley is funded appropriately for the diversion, as well as our water supply project, our Red River Valley Water Supply Project. I also served on Industry, Business, and Labor during the last session, and I was on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. Both were extremely exciting and interesting for me. I was appointed by the governor to the Insurance Advisory Council, the Unemployment Insurance Advisory Council, and I also chaired a high-level radioactive nuclear waste committee. As a business owner and CEO, it's been my job to vet out proposals. And I take that same type of attention to detail to the legislature. Sometimes things that sound like a good idea up front on their face are really not such a good idea at the end of the day. And I hope that I can bring a voice of realism and practicalism to the process in Bismarck. During the next 4 years, I want to focus on good policy that balance the budgets. I want to make sure that we're investing in infrastructure, and including water projects, of course. And I want to make sure that we that we advance our workforce training and that our academy here in the Fargo-Moorhead becomes a reality.
Thank you, Senator
Finally,
Roars. Thank you. We will next move. Sorry, your 2 minutes are up, but you will have
my
a chance.
clock, there's no clock working on my screen. I don't know where your clock is.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you hit gallery view, you should be able to pull it up there. And while you're working on finding that, we will switch over to our second candidate, Miss Terry Hedman. And she was the one that was unable to come today, but I will share her opening remarks video right now.
Well, hello, everybody. I want to thank Katie for allowing me to tape this conversation, this one-sided conversation today. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I want to congratulate the FM West Fargo Chamber on their new CEO. I just saw that news. That is absolutely fabulous. An organization of your size is very important to this community. So congratulations to you. I'm happy for your future. So today, I'm just going to say briefly a little about myself. I'm a registered nurse for 37 years, married. I have 2 children. I have 2 grandchildren that I care deeply about, as do you, and for your family. And I graduated from St. Luke's Hospital School of Nursing. If you recall, there was a dormitory right across from the old St. Luke's Hospital. And so that's where I attended nursing school. I went to Moorhead State, which is now Minnesota State University Moorhead, for my bachelor's degree. I have a master's in strategic leadership from the University of Mary Fargo campus. And I wanted to keep it all get everywhere. So I went to Concordia for my parish nurse training. So very happy that we have such rich offerings here in the Fargo-Moorhead community. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to tell you today. I also am a cancer program surveyor for the American College of Surgeons Commission on Cancer. It's a huge honor, and I think I'm one of 2 nurses in the whole United States that serves in that capacity. So thank you so much again for welcoming me today.
Katie, you're muted.
Thank you, Shannon. I was just saying, we will now move on to Representative Shannon Roars-Jones for your 2 minutes of opening remarks. You may begin.
Perfect. Thank you, Katie and Mason, for organizing this. Thank you to the Fargo Chamber for the work that you do in the community and sharing this information, because I think it's great that we have opportunities to educate the public about the candidates. My name is Shannon Roars-Jones. I'm a representative currently in District 46, just finishing my first term in the legislature, and have really enjoyed and appreciated the opportunity to serve in the legislature. One of my favorite parts about that is the opportunity to just learn about so many issues affecting the citizens of North Dakota and engage with so many people in the state of North Dakota. But just by way of background, I work in Fargo here for our family business, Roars Companies. I serve as the attorney and commercial real estate broker for our company. Also, I'm married to my husband of almost 19 years, Ross. He works for the Fargo Fire Department, and we have 3 daughters, Olivia, Kendall, and Kate, who are in high school, middle school, and elementary school. And so the reason I got into the legislature back in 2016 was my desire to make sure that North Dakota remains a place where people want to live and work and raise their families. That wasn't necessarily the case when I was growing up. Fargo was didn't have the opportunities for our young people that we have right now. And so I want to make sure that we continue to support strong education system, strong healthcare system, strong economy, to make sure that we continue to be a place where our young people thrive and want to live. In my first couple of sessions, I've had the opportunity to serve on both the Judiciary Committee and Energy and Natural Resources. I've enjoyed those opportunities and learned a great deal. I'm hoping this next legislative session to serve on the Appropriations Committee, where I can influence the budgets for the state of North Dakota.
Thank you, Representative Shannon Roars-Jones. We'll now move on to Representative Jim Casper. Your 2 minutes. You may begin. Oh, sorry, you were muted, Representative Casper. We had to mute when we switched screens there. There you go.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I had unmuted and I guess it was. Okay, well, thank you, Katie, and thank you to the Chamber for hosting this event. Appreciate the opportunity to visit with the Chamber members as well as the people from our city and our district who may be watching. I'm Representative Jim Casper, first elected to the North Dakota House in 2000. I've been in the House now for 10 legislative sessions. I've had the opportunity to rise up in the leadership in the House. I chair the Government and Veterans Affairs Committee. I've been the chair since 2013. I also had the privilege to chair the special House Committee on Ethics in the 2019 session, which implemented the constitutional amendment regarding ethics. And that was a special appointment. I found in research that I think there was only 3 times in the history of the North Dakota House that one person served as chairman of 2 committees. So I'm sort of proud of that. I also serve on the Industry, Business, and Labor Committee. And there we deal with banking, insurance, securities issues, workers' comp, unemployment, and so on. The interim committees that I serve on are the Commerce Committee, the Judiciary Committee, and the Healthcare Reform Committee, which I'm sure we'll have some questions on that. And I was appointed in 2011 to the Redistricting Committee by leadership, and I would expect I would be appointed in 2021 Redistricting Committee as well. That's very important for Fargo and District 46 because we're going to be facing with 1 and maybe 2 new districts in Fargo, so we'll have to draw lines all over our city, which will be different district lines as well as the entire state. I'm the president of Asset Management Group Incorporated. We're an employee benefits and retirement planning company. We specialize now in association health plans. I'm married to my wife, Sandy, my high school sweetheart from Beulah. We have 2 sons, one in Woodbury and one here in Fargo. So I'm looking forward to the discussion.
All right. Thank you, Representative Casper. And going to Mr. Ben W. Hansen, your 2 minutes.
Thanks, Kay, and thanks to the Chamber for putting this event on. And like the previous speakers had said, it's wonderful that our local Chamber makes this kind of information available to all of our members and documented here on video like this so they can take a look whenever they're able to. My name is Ben Hansen, and for the purposes of this race, it's Ben W. Hansen, as we have a bit of a unique situation with our ticket here. I previously served in the legislature for 4 years in a separate district that I used to live in back from 2012 to 2016. I certainly enjoyed my time there, and I really enjoyed my time talking with constituents and learning how the state government was ran and what was working for my constituents there at the time in Fargo, and what seemed to be a little bit outdated or had been used maybe past its point of usefulness. And I wanted to return since I had an opportunity to run for the seat this year to see if the voters would be so kind as to elect me, and if so, I wanted to see if I couldn't help modernize the state government, the budgetary process we currently have in place, and try and bring the state government a little bit closer to the people that serves and the taxpayers that pay for it. A little bit of background about myself: I am Fargo born and raised. I grew up here, went to high school and college here. I'm currently a graduate student at NDSU in their MBA program. I work in cloud computer sales here, where I talk to customers and clients all over America and Canada about their on-prem and off-prem cloud environments and what they can use with new cloud technology to enhance their business and their customers' experiences. And previous to that, I was in real estate for a while, in which case, since I'm talking to the Chamber here, I did serve on several business-related boards, such as the Home Builders Public Issues Policy, and I chaired the Government Affairs Committee for the FM Realtors for a while. Looking forward to the discussion. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you so much. Well, that concludes our opening remarks here this morning, or this afternoon rather. And we will now get to our first question. So our first question, probably to no one's surprise, has to do with COVID-19 response. Thank you to everybody that's been voting on the questions. We will try to get to as many of these top ones as we can, starting with the mandates and closures of COVID-19. So there's ongoing conversations balancing the priorities of public safety and reopening the economy. How do you feel we as a state are doing on balancing these priorities? And would you support more or less mandates and closures? And this one, we will start with Ms. Terry Hedman. So I will quick share her video with everybody.
would support a mask mandate, and I understand as a candidate that might not be a popular thing to say, but sometimes in leadership, it's not about popularity. We have a infectious disease rate today of over 10%. This is October 13th throughout our state. We've had 12 individuals die in the last 24 hours in our state. So this simply must be controlled better. And so I insist on a mask mandate, and brave leaders will follow me.
All right, and we will next go to Representative Shannon Rowers Jones. Your 1-minute response. Sorry, Shannon, this time you're muted.
Technology. Thank you. Thank you very much. I apologize. I need to pay attention to my technology. Thank you for starting the time over. I wanted to say that I'm going to have to disagree with the previous speaker. I don't believe a mask mandate is the right course of action. If you have a mask mandate, then you have to determine how you're going to enforce a mask mandate. The other problem, or I guess the thing that I would say in lieu of a mask mandate, is setting good guidelines and then working with people to encourage them to participate in those guidelines. I trust our citizens both in the interest of their own health and the health of their friends and coworkers. Here at our business, we do wear masks when we are in proximity to one another. Obviously, in my own office, my own place, I don't have to do that. But we do that because we care about the people that we work with and we want to keep one another safe. I think that we need to make sure that we're tying everything that we're doing back to science-based and kind of data-driven recommendations that are coming out of the CDC, and not falling prey to the hype that can cause people to make decisions irrationally.
Thank you, Representative. We will now move on to Representative Jim Casper. Your 1 minute.
I would agree with Shannon, Katie. The rules that are in place right now in North Dakota, although we're seeing an increase in the number of COVID cases, I believe a part of it is due to mass testing. We have a constitution which guarantees the people the right to assemble. And as Shannon and Jim would say, and then Ben, when he was in the legislature, I sort of like to quote the Constitution because I believe it's the guiding principle of our state and our nation. Personal responsibility is important. Perhaps we need to maybe stress that a little bit more in some of the public announcements that are coming on. Governor Burgum has done a very good job in stressing the importance of personal responsibility to the people of our city and our state. And I think we just have to stress a little bit stronger that we need to be a little more responsible. I trust the people. I think they will get on board and help out.
Thank you, Representative Casper. Mr. Ben W. Hansen, your 1 minute.
Thank you. Well, the question was about our government's response to COVID-19 and, yeah, this is the chamber, how it's going to interact with our businesses and our economy. Let's take a step back and take a look at what the state government has done with COVID-19 so far. I am certainly not jealous of Governor Burgum serving in the time that he's serving, and I don't think anyone is. But we had a total of 6 people, you can almost count them on one hand, doling out millions of dollars in federal government relief money without the real say, in my opinion, of the state legislature. When you're talking about the state legislature, which is what all of us are running for, I think all of us should have a voice at the table. I think District 46 in South Fargo should have a voice at the table. And what happened, unfortunately, was the governor and a few other statewide elected officials and someone who's the chair of the Appropriations Committee, and to get into a little bit of inside baseball, who had a primary ran against him by the governor, were making decisions about these millions of dollars. I think that's too much insider baseball. I don't think it's serving the people on a local level, on a detailed level. I think that needs to change, and my time's up.
Thank you, Mr. Ben W. Hansen. Senator Jim Rowers, your 1 minute. You need to unmute there.
Thank you, Katie. So I believe the question was, should we have a mask mandate or not? And I believe that that would be an onus placed on our law enforcement community. That would be an undue burden for them at any time, not only today. And I think when I take a look at our businesses and the need for a mandate, those people that are in close proximity with each other are doing it on their own. They don't need to be told or fined if in fact they don't get it done. They're doing it. That's the way I think we should run our country, our state. And we're absolutely not in need of a mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Roars. Moving on to the next question. This one was ranked very high by our attendees today. Wanting to hear your stances on this. So this is the FM diversion project. The FM diversion project has been a long-standing priority within our region. With construction ramping into its final stage, $120 million still has yet to be allocated from the North Dakota requested portion. Are you committed to advocating for remaining funding needed for this project? In this one, we'll start with Representative Shannon Rowers Jones. You'll have 1 minute to respond.
Perfect. Thank you, Katie. Absolutely. I'm committed to continuing to work for the funding for the FM diversion. That was a priority for me for both of my last two sessions. I've been very active with working with the members of the diversion committee to make sure that we're educating the public and the legislature about the need. And one of the things that I think is most important about that is having persuasive voices at the table. I think that both myself and the other Republican members of the ticket are persuasive voices at the table. Just going back to one of the prior comments, talking about having a say in how money is being allocated and doled out. Unfortunately, being part of a super minority doesn't give you a voice at the table. And so I think it's important that we realize it does matter not only the personality of the person that we want to elect, but the party, because otherwise you have no ability to influence what's actually happening.
Thank you, Representative Rowers Jones. Representative Jim Casper, your 1 minute to respond.
Thank you, Katie. It's important that we have a seat at the table for District 46, which we do have. The three incumbents are very strongly positioned for leadership in the Republican Party, in the House caucus and the Senate caucus. The funding for the Fargo diversion is going to have to be fought for very hardly in the next session. We're looking at approximately a $745 million budget shortfall. So we have got to stand, and my running mates and myself do stand in the past and will stand in the future to secure those funds. You know, if we don't finish the Fargo diversion, here's a situation that some people may not know. If we don't finish the diversion, we would be in a floodplain, and the cost of flood insurance for people for their homes could be anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 per year. So I'm certainly going to be fighting very strongly for that. I was part of the legislation that helped secure funding for the flood control inside of the city of Fargo. I was a co-sponsor of one of those bills back a number of sessions ago. I'll continue to bring the need for the funding for the diversion to the legislature in the next session.
Thank you, Representative Casper. And Mr. Ben W. Hansen, your 1 minute.
Thank you. I don't think, if I want to be very honest about it, you're going to find a lot of daylight between Jim Roars hasn't had a chance to talk yet, but the four of us who are on the call about the actual opinion of the actual project itself and the need for permanent flood protection for Fargo to protect our economy, our businesses, and our personal homes. Our South Fargo residents are in the floodplain. They do need this project. Other areas and cities in the states have gotten it, and the state needs to step up and do that for Fargo as well. Actions are better than words, of course, and I do have a voting record in my brief time in the legislature supporting the FM diversion and the permanent flood project as it was. I was one of four members of the House to vote against the entire state's water budget on protest of something that at the time Majority Leader Carlson was doing, interrupting and overseeing local control and being able to buy out homes here in Fargo that the residents of Fargo had voted on. I thought that was very poor. But I also believe that I had another point, but my time is up, darn.
I guess closing remarks. All right. Thank you, Mr. Ben W. Hansen. We will move to Senator Jim Rowers. Your 1 minute.
Well, thank you again. Yes, I'm very much in support of trying to secure the last $120 million for the diversion project. I know that during the conversations we've had in the interim, this subject comes up repeatedly, and it is at the forefront of all legislators across the state and the importance of this funding deficit at this particular time. My hope is that through the process of bidding out this project, that not only Do we shave that 120 million that it doesn't grow on us? Typically, projects over time have a tendency to grow, and I hope that doesn't happen here. But we're ready to go to fight for District 46 and the eastern part of the state to secure whatever funding is necessary to get the job done. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Roars. And we will now move to Ms. Terry Heidman's response to the question.
I do support funding the FM diversion project. It's not without knowing that there are people who are sad to see their land, needed for this change, homeowners who have to sell their homes. So I have empathy for those things that it costs emotionally as well as financially, but I am a strong supporter of the diversion.
All right, moving on to the next question, and this one will start with Representative Jim Casper. This one was also ranked very high in what our attendees wanted to hear about today, and I don't think it'll be a surprise to you as it already came up in the conversation about the diversion, and this is balancing the budget. The pandemic has hit our economy hard in multiple ways, including instability in commodity prices. Understanding that it is constitutionally required to have a balanced budget, what kinds of budget cuts are you anticipating this session? In what areas may you look to cut back? We'll begin with Representative Jim Casper, your 1 minute.
Oh, thank you, Katie. You're absolutely right. We are mandated to balance the budget, and we will balance the budget. Governor Burgum has already started looking at the reductions that are going to be needed. I think he's asked his department heads to look at a 10% reduction across the board. So that'll be in place, something for the legislature to look at when we get there. But we're going to have to prioritize where we spend our money. And as I said earlier about the diversion, it's going to be a battle to get the dollars for the Fargo diversion because we're going to have a $700 to $800 million shortfall. So the fact is, we're going to need strong leadership from the eastern part of North Dakota, I believe, to help secure the funding. Where can we get dollars that we can squeeze? Well, we have to look at what I call right-sizing state government. The bureaucracy in Bismarck has increased because of the budget surplus that we've had for so many years. We're going to maybe have to look at squeezing a little bit more and using the technology that we have in place to be able to get the job done without by reductions in the spending.
Thank you, Representative Casper. Mr. Ben W. Hansen, you are 1 minute to respond.
Thank you. I would also repeat, thank you. I would also repeat that we are mandated by the Constitution to balance the budget. That will simply happen. I'm aware of Governor Burgum's call to take a look at across the board cuts again, which is something that he had proposed before. I find that's a very poor way of trying to plan out a state government budget and trying to actually prioritize what needs we have versus what wants we have. If you're looking at personal budget, if you're looking at business budget, you start with a water cooler budget first. You start with the extras or the things that you maybe want but don't need. And listing what you would keep or what you would fight for is an important part of the values that we are going to hold representing out in Bismarck. So I would work to hold public education, public health, and mental health services harmless, as we have seen increased needs in those in our state with an increasing population, with our diversifying economy, with the oil economy out west. We need to make sure that things like our research universities aren't being cut in the middle of projects, therefore wasting all the money that we were had spending on them before, and take a look at things like, buying billboards to advertise jobs in North Dakota, the Department of Commerce. There is facetious spending that can be cut, and across the board is, well, my time's up, but no.
Thank you, Mr. Ben W. Hansen. We will move to Senator Jim Roars. Your 1 minute on the question.
Okay, again, thank you. But Ben, I have to say that I disagree with you on this one because of the fact that Governor Burgum came out and asked for across the board 10% cut. Doesn't mean that that's where it's going to end up. I think from a business perspective, all of us businesses manage budget. And when you have to reduce a budget, the best way to do is go to everyone that is involved and ask them to cut back where they can. And then at the end of the day, you're going to make the decision, do I really need to cut human services or not? What are we losing to the citizens of North Dakota? So my feeling is, yes, you ask everyone to cut, but I think you protect human services, you protect education, but all others have got to come to the table. And that's the way you balance the budget. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Roars. Next, we'll have Ms. Terry Heidman's response to this question.
It's going to be very, very difficult. I will be unyielding. I will not allow cuts to education. And I know it's harder to say what I won't cut than it is to say what I will cut. But I won't support large $1.8 million advertising campaigns. Understanding, of course, I know that came from some federal funds, probably from COVID, but I'm going to look critically at every budget item and assess whether or not I think it has value and worth, and then weigh the human cost of anything that would be cut.
Right, Representative Shannon Rose Jones, your 1 minute on it.
All right, perfect. Always the challenge of going last, right, is some of the things that have already been said. But obviously we need to look at needs versus wants. And I think the best thing that we can do is look at how we can become more efficient and innovative. We have some opportunities that are being developed through the state with this, with our most recent legislative sessions that will allow us to streamline our IT. I think we also need to be looking at opportunities for creating proactive solutions that reduce our downstream costs. For example, working with mental health and addiction services will help us reduce our very expensive incarceration costs. Looking at mental health and making sure that we're getting those things into our education system will help us to make sure that our children, even when they're learning at home, if that continues, are continuing to be learning efficiently. I think we do need to make sure that we're working with our educators to make sure that we can get our teachers and our students safely back in the schools too.
Thank you, Representative Shannon Rose Jones. We'll now move on to the next question, which will start with Mr. Ben W. Hansen for a response. This question has to do with workforce solutions. So as we look to the 2021 legislative session, what kind of workforce solution policies would you support? This could be grants for career academies or solutions like the Career Builders Scholarship and Repayment Programs. Your 1 minute to respond, Mr. Ben Hansen.
The multi-government project that's been with the trade school, that's been supported by the county and some by the legislature, has been excellent, and I would continue to support that as it moves forward. But we have what is always said as a good problem here in North Dakota, and you hear it at a lot of chamber events, a lot of economic development events. We have a lot of job spots open, but they've been open for a long time, and they're for skilled labor. It's a many-faceted solution that needs to be employed. I would say one that I don't feel is emphasized maybe enough is better defining a future for the higher education institutions in North Dakota, not just UND and NDSU, but all, I believe it's 12 or 13 are written into our state's constitution. It's a fairly unique thing we have as a state. And instead of maybe some of the overlap that we see that gets discussed, and I think maybe short-sightedly, and I don't know by anybody here, just in general, I've heard discussions by the legislature of cutting or getting rid of those, looking at specializing them towards, like we see with the School of Science, the job openings we have here in the state. We have the facilities, we have the talent, we have the staff, so we can train them right here.
Thank you, Mr. Ben Hansen. We will now move to Senator Jim Rowers. Your 1 minute response on the end.
Katie, will you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. As we look to the 2021 legislative session, what kind of workforce solution policies would you support? This could be grants for career academies or solutions like Career Builders Scholarship and Repayment Programs.
Okay, well, absolutely, we want to expand all of those opportunities, but I think the model that we have in Bismarck is something that we should really look to duplicate here in the eastern part of the state, and that's with BSC's relationship with the high schools. That's what we need to engage in here with our academy here, with the joint venture between the business industry and Wahpeton with our high school opportunities, our high school students, to try to create an opportunity where these high school students can begin to be exposed to all the opportunities that are out there for them in the trades world. And I think we're well on the way to making that happen, and it will be huge for the employers of North Dakota to have a large pool to draw from for our workforce needs. We've had this problem for 40 years, and we think that this is one of the solutions that needs to be implemented. We need to get the academy done soon.
Thank you, Senator Roars. Moving to Ms. Terry Hedman's response on this one.
Obviously, when we're talking about workforce, we need to have a multi-pronged approach to our solutions. So yes, workforce academies. I think one of the things that my generation did was we told our kids, you're going to college, you're going to college, you're going to college. And you know, that is not the perfect solution for every student. So I do want to support workforce academies. I do want to help those that are pursuing bachelor's and master's degrees. And I want to be a community that people want to live in and want to raise their families in. So having our state be a healthy climate, politically and health-wise, is going to be really important to help grow that workforce.
Moving to Representative Shannon Rowers-Jones, your 1 minute.
Perfect. Obviously, we have a really unique and amazing situation here in North Dakota with our exceptionally low unemployment, even now during the time of COVID. And so we need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to attract and retain our workforce. And that includes supporting the Career Workforce Academy, which will train our skilled workers on this side of the state. During the last couple of sessions, we have been working on making license reciprocity easier so we can attract our military spouses and other people from other states to North Dakota and make it easier for them to transition into working in North Dakota. We have set up programs for loan reimbursements for people who are working in the high demand skill trades and high demand healthcare fields. And obviously we want to make sure that we're setting up tax structures that make people want to live in and remain in North Dakota, and make sure that we have good environments and schools for people to raise their families and send their children to. Everything that we can to want our citizens or citizens from outside of North Dakota to come to and live in North Dakota.
Thank you, Representative Rowers-Jones.
Thank
And
you.
Representative Jim Casper, your 1 minute.
Thank you, Katie. I would agree with most everything that's been said as far as the cooperation with the high schools, the colleges, the two-year degreed schools, and so on. But I want to bring up a couple of other points. We have to look at technology and research as well. We have two of the finest research universities in the country at UND and NDSU. In the last session, UND and NDSU came in with a big ask. I think it was started at $100 million to increase the research capabilities for the two universities. It ended up going down to 40 million, and I think we ended up giving them 20 million. We need to look at increasing dramatically the dollars for research, because what we're doing in Fargo, as an example, with Aldevron and some of the other companies on disease research with the genomes and those types of things, it's marvelous. Same way with the drone industry at UND. We need to look to bring those industries further and further into the 21st century.
Thank you, Representative Casper. Our next question has to do with the Legacy Fund, and this one will start with Senator Jim Rowers on. So the Legacy Fund has long been talked about, and this session, a decision will likely be made on the use of the Legacy Fund earnings. Do you support using all of the earnings or reinvesting some? And if you support using some, what kind of proposals would you support? And if you support reinvesting some, would you push for investments to be at least in part invested in North Dakota? Senator Rowers, your 1 minute.
All right, very good question. I do not support reinvesting all of the earnings. I believe we should take a portion of the earnings and learn how to walk before you run. Let's figure out what works, okay, before we go all in on this thing. On the issue of investing in North Dakota, I'm 100% behind investing in North Dakota propositions. Next item I'd like to make is that this investment that we're contemplating needs to be a legacy investment. And a legacy investment is an investment that continues to get back to the citizens of North Dakota forever and ever, not a one and done type approach. So I'm fully in favor of reinvesting some of the earnings. I'm fully in favor of keeping it in North Dakota, and I want it to be a long time investment for the state of North Dakota.
Thank you, Senator Rowers. We'll move now to Ms. Terry Hinman's response.
The question about the legacy funds. I would support using some of the legacy funds for reinvestment, and absolutely it needs to remain in North Dakota for North Dakota initiatives. I am a member of our church's foundation, and I do believe in building a strong financial background that will exist beyond our years.
And moving next to Representative Shannon Rose-Jones, your 1 minute.
Right. Yes, I think that we need to take a look at the legacy fund and change the way the earnings are dealt with right now, because currently all of the earnings automatically drop into the general fund, which is essentially the same as having the interest from your 401k drop into your checkbook. We don't want to have those funds automatically transferring into our checkbook so that it just becomes part of our normal year after year spending. But I think we do need to kind of shut off that tap, look at strategic ways that we can invest those, like the others have said, in things that are going to be beneficial to the state of North Dakota. I think we can look at a lot of infrastructure grants, possibly underwriting some bonding. I also think that, let's see, there was another question that you had. Oh, North Dakota. Yeah. Obviously, the investments that we have outside of the United States ought to be brought back to the United States. I think we can use a lot of these funds for investing in North Dakota, but we do need to make sure that we're diversified so that if the economy of North Dakota struggles, that the legacy fund doesn't struggle as well. So I think we need to have a good mix.
Thank you, Representative Shannon Rose-Jones. We'll now move to Representative Jim Casper, your 1 minute.
Thank you. Just checking my mute button there. I think one of the things that the Republican leadership is discussing currently during the interim is to actually set up that separate fund where the legacy earnings go into the separate fund and not into the general fund. And that means we're going to have a much stronger scrutiny on how those earnings are spent. I don't think we should spend all of them necessarily, but in the tight budget this time around, we may have to spend all of them. As far as the principle, I'm not talking now about invading the principle of the legacy fund. I'm talking about redirecting the investments of the legacy fund. As Shannon said, there's many of our dollars, billions, are invested overseas, around the world, and around the United States. We can use some of those fixed earning dollars to use for bonding, for our needs, for our seniors, for our infrastructure, and so on. Let's invest in North Dakota with those fixed investment dollars so we help grow our economy with dollars that we already have and save money for our citizens while we're doing it.
Thank you, Representative Casper. Mr. Ben W. Hansen, your 1 minute response.
So hard to follow up everybody on these. The legacy fund is several years old now, and I'll think of almost a decade, and is worth billions. And essentially, when it was started as a rainy day fund. And I find a problem we have right now, as far as legislative philosophy, is we don't have a definition of a rainy day fund. And that may seem like a not all important concept to wrangle, but when we've had a once in a century pandemic impact the global economy, and certainly impacted us here at home when you're dealing with a state that mostly in large part trades with an agriculture and energy commodity prices, we don't have a definition for how we're going to be using that here to even react to COVID, let alone a long-term plan for it. I think it's very unfortunate. You asked what some of the programs would be that I would support with the earnings. I'd like to see some kind of a permanent building fund or an expansion of cheap loans so we can keep up our infrastructures on campuses. There are several buildings right now, including NDSU, that desperately need updating. There's a 2-minute answer I have, but I can't because time's up. Darn it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Van Hansen. All right, I think this will be our last question that we're going to ask the candidates because I want to leave time for 2 minutes of closing remarks, especially since it seems like all of you have something more you'd like to say about almost all the questions. So ending with a pro-business policy question. And this one we'll start with Ms. Terry Hedman's response. What is one pro-business related policy that you are looking forward to either sponsoring or supporting this upcoming session, and why is it important to business?
Healthcare to be more affordable, and I consider that a pro-business policy. You know, the leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States is healthcare expenses. So I know as a business owner, you would like to provide that healthcare support to your employees, and it's becoming more and more difficult to do all the time. So that would be the legislation that I would try to support.
And next, Representative Shannon Rose-Jones, your 1 minute.
So the question was about pro-business legislation that we would support?
Yes, any pro-business legislation that you're supporting or would like to sponsor this session.
Perfect. I think one of the biggest issues that our businesses have right now, and I'll say outside of COVID, is workforce, making sure that we have the ability to attract and retain good employees so that people have the staff that they need to run their organizations. So I think I have been a proponent of making it easier for people to get licensed in the state of North Dakota, but then also working with some of the boards to make sure that the licensing requirements that each of them have aren't unnecessarily protectionist, to make sure that people who want to work in certain industries have the ability to do that, including people who may have a criminal background. A lot of times there are automatic disqualifications for people who might have had prior encounters with law that make it more difficult for them to find jobs in the future. Obviously, if we want people to be successful and be rehabilitated and reintegrate back into the community, they have to be able to find jobs. And so making it easier for people with past prior criminal histories to find jobs.
Thank you, Representative Shannon Rowers Jones. Representative Jim Casper, your 1 minute.
I think one of the areas that we seldom look at during each legislative session is regulations that businesses need to abide by. And by regulations, I mean needless regulations. Serving on the Industry Business and Labor Committee for the 10 sessions I've been there, and we're generally looking at how can we regulate business more. I think we need to step back and take a look at how do we unshackle the businesses in the state of North Dakota by reducing needless regulations. We have about 1,000 bills that we go through every legislative session, and very few looks at deregulation. So I think focusing on how we increase the business climate will not only help through regulation decreases, will not only help our businesses in North Dakota, but will also encourage businesses from outside of our state to come to North Dakota. You can see some of the other states that are striving very, very well and bringing businesses in. They focus on reducing regulations. I think that's a good step for us to take in the next session.
Thank you, Representative Casper. Mr. Ben W. Hansen, your 1 minute on this.
Thank you. I want to mention I completely agree with Representative Rowers Jones's priority, and I think it's an excellent one to have. I do have to say I have to disagree with Representative Casper's assessment that we do not have a very business-friendly regulatory environment here. From what I have seen in the state of North Dakota, the thing I'd like to focus on, amongst others, is changing how we do the budget as state legislators for the whole state of North Dakota, and it directly impacts businesses. As one of 4 states that meets every other year for session, when we set that budget, we set those regulations, when we set the law, everyone has to live by it for 20 months. If there are unintended consequences, legislators aren't perfect, that sometimes just happens, but if there's a problem, they have to wait over a year before they can even come to their state government to address those problems. That's not the kind of dexterity we need in 2020. That's not the kind of ability we have when you're talking about fines, licenses, fees that businesses have to pay and deal with. If something happens that they don't like or they weren't able to be present for, they're not able to make up for it within a calendar year like you are in 46 of the other states.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ben Hansen. And Senator Jim Rowers, your 1 minute on this question.
All right, again, thank you, Katie. This is interesting because I'm going to spin on a couple of everybody else's words here. Shannon talked about recruiting personnel, and the best recruiting tool that we have in the state of North Dakota is our education system. Of the students that come here from out of state that experience North Dakota, they love it, they stay. I'm one of those people from 40 some years ago. What we need to do is we need to bolster up our universities through research. Jim talked about Aldevron and what that has meant to our community. That's exactly what we need to continue to promote through research, grants, and scholarships through our university system, which will help attract more people to our state to fill the jobs that we're creating. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rowers. We are now going to switch to the 2 minute closing remarks. So for the remarks, we'll begin with Representative Shannon Rowers Jones. 2 minutes.
Make sure. Yep, no, I had to get unmuted here. You know, I really appreciate you putting this together, and I appreciate the content of the questions. They're all important issues. One thing I just wanted to go back to during this opportunity is the Legacy Fund, Mr. Hansen said that the legacy fund is a rainy day fund, and I'd just like to correct that because it's not a rainy day fund. It was set up to replace our oil and gas revenues when at some point in the future those go away. We know at some point they're going to go away. We don't know when that will be, but roughly half of the money that we spend every year comes from oil and gas revenues. And so if we don't have a plan in place to use that legacy fund, we're going to have to come up with half of our revenues every year. And I think we need to make sure that we're looking at that very critically. That being said, I think we need to talk about effective legislators. I have had the privilege of being in the legislature now for just these 4 years, 2 sessions, and have had the ability to get about 75% of my bills that I've sponsored passed over those years. I look forward to the opportunity to continue to work on behalf of the community. I have worked with a number of people in a number of different realms to make sure that their issues are carried to the legislature and passed. And unfortunately, that is a benefit of being in the majority, but I think it's important that we need to look at that. If we want people who are able to get things accomplished, we need to make sure that we are electing the people who have the ability either to work across the aisles to collect enough votes to get their bills passed, or else we're working with people to send people who are in the majority to the legislature, because you can be the nicest person in the world, but if you don't have the ability to get your legislation passed, you're not able to do a lot while you're in the legislature.
Thank you, Representative Shannon Rose Jones. We'll move to Representative Jim Casper, your 2 minutes for closing remarks.
Thank you, Katie. And again, thank you to the Chamber and to yourself for sponsoring this forum. It's great to interact with your members as well as the people in our district and our city and our state. Shannon talked about effective leadership. I've checked my record since I've been in the legislature. I've actually sponsored or co-sponsored 369 bills. I'm accused sometimes by my worthy opponents of not being able to reach across the aisle. Out of those 369 bills, exactly 100 of them had co-sponsors in the Democrat Party. And of those 369 bills, 192 became law. So if we talk about effectiveness and leadership, I think my record has proven that. I do reach across the aisle. I chair a committee where we have Republicans and Democrats on the committee. We have a great time with each other. I think if you talk to my Democrat friends, Pam Anderson as an example from District 41, Mary Schneider here from District 21 or District 11, I forget which number. We have a great time. We're respectful of each other, and we pass good legislation out of the Government and Veterans Affairs Committee. It was said earlier that we need more effective leadership in the 2021 session, that we did not have a seat at the table prior. We've had a seat at the table because we talked to our legislative leaders during the interim. But I also want to point out, being a chairman of a committee, having been there for the number of times I have, that I'm not only I have a seat at the table, I have a seat at the Republican leadership table because of my position and my time in the legislature. I'm committed to doing what's best for the District 46, for the city of Fargo, and the whole state. I'm looking forward to the next session, and I ask for your members to consider voting for me if they're in District 46. Pass the good word if they're not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Casper. We'll move to Mr. Ben W. Hansen, your 2 minutes for closing remarks.
Thanks so much, Katie, and thanks to the Chamber, not only for putting on the event, but again, just all the things you do with Eggs and Issues and other things to keep our members informed and have an active business community and association it's allowed me to learn a lot about businesses that what businesses need and meet people here in the community. I'm really fortunate to live in a country and live in a place where I can run for elected office, have the awesome honor of even the potential of having voters send me out to the state legislature and work on issues that are important to them, set a state budget, and the rules and regulations our businesses live by and hopefully flourish by. I'm really excited to be running again. I have before, definitely won, definitely lost, but it's an exciting opportunity, and it's a dire time in a lot of ways when you look at the national and global economic impact of what we're going through right now. But I think what is so important next year is that when we're taking a look at what is the best legislation and working hard to communicate with our constituents, not just out in Bismarck, but electronically, being back here, being present and being empathetic, that we are also thinking outside of the box and not simply doing things as they always have been done, weighing whether something has worked or not, weighing whether something could be better, and if we could have a new format or a different way of going about our legislative business that serves the people here the best, and most importantly, prepares our children and our workforce for the economy for the next century, which is simply not going to look like the one we previously had. I know we can here in North Dakota. We've got some of the best people and the best work ethic in the country. We just need to get together and make it happen. I'm out there every day trying to earn everyone's vote, and I hope your members who have had a chance to listen to me today are willing to cast their vote for me. It's unfortunate that my running mate, Ben M. Hansen, wasn't able to be here today. I know he's got both dad duty and job duty, so I just want to throw out there that I think he'd be a thoughtful voice in the state legislature as well, and you can check out his website and see him online as well. So thank you so much, and thanks to everyone who I got to see again over Zoom here today. It was fun talking with y'all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ben Hansen. Moving to Senator Jim Rowers, your 2 minutes of closing remarks.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Thank you, Chamber. Thank you for the voters that are watching. Appreciate this opportunity to visit with you. You know, I'm running for re-election to help make sure that we keep a balanced budget in the state of North Dakota. And that causes me to want to go back and talk about the legacy fund, the conversation that we started, and some of the things I didn't get a chance to say. You know, in our business world, when times are good and cash is flush, you pay for everything that you do. When times are not so good, you need to rely on your balance sheet. North Dakota has a great balance sheet. Our legacy fund is one of those assets that we have that we can leverage during a downtime. That's why I'm supporting that we use our legacy fund to create bonding opportunities for infrastructure improvements, educational opportunities, and research dollars that are so badly needed to continue our state's growth. And there's no better use for the legacy fund than to help our state grow. So that was another one of the issues regarding the legacy fund that we need to get a conversation going. It's being talked about extensively right now. And I know that during this legislative session, it's going to be one of the hottest issues that we're going to deal with is how do we leverage the assets of our legacy fund to better the state of North Dakota. With that, I hope that I can garner your support and your vote. I would love to go back to Bismarck and continue to fight for North Dakota in the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rowers. And we will move to Ms. Terry Hedman's final closing remarks as well.
I want to thank you, Katie, again for being so kind and for helping to arrange this. I want to thank the FMWF Chamber for hosting this opportunity. I understand the business community might look at me as a Democrat and say that girl's going to just spend. And that would be wrong. That is not the way I am. I am very conservative with dollars. I do look out for the wellness and the health of people. That is my main call as a professional, and that's what I would carry to Bismarck. So I would love to have your vote. There are Republicans that are voting for me, and they say it's because they know who I am and they know how I get things done. I also want to thank my opponent, Jim Roars. Jim and I have carried on this candidate season, if you will, in an upright, respectful, kind manner. And I look forward to that continuing. I also want to thank my 2 running mates, Ben M. Hansen and Ben W. Hansen, because they have been an absolute delight to run with. And I can't imagine not having them. So thank you.
All right. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time that we have this afternoon. But I again want to thank you, the candidates, for joining us today and all those that are viewing this live and the recording later. Please remember to vote on or before November 3rd and stay tuned to our Chamber Advocacy webpage for more candidate information and election resources regarding where and how to vote early or on Election Day. Also consider joining us for the remaining 2 candidate forums tomorrow, or watch yesterday's recording on our webpage. More information about all of that and links to join those for tomorrow can be found on our webpage. If you would take a few seconds to fill out the poll regarding chamber election resources that's showing up on your screen for attendees right now, that would be very helpful. And thank you so much, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, candidates.
Thank you.